us and refuse to move. Why they do your mother is right? Why they do your wife is right? Then what you gonna say?
We don't want to interfere with your protest action. You got the right to protest. But there are democratic areas for you that you got permission to. The permission for you to protest is on that side there.
I'm pussy. Our pussy. It's power. I hope you realize how powerful it is. This will not end. Not until something happens.
What the fuck are you doing? We're supposed to be protecting us!
Who are you, man? What are you doing? Man? What are you, man? I said we were protecting right and kill some. Why you stand like a bunch of pussies? Where were you when those girls were getting kidnapped and raped and
Go to
killed?
school and learn about these things.
Someone got cut up in their own house, man. Where were you then? But I'm glad that you, as a police officer, are laughing while we're protesting for our rights. But it's funny, right? Let's laugh, continue laughing. Continue laughing. It's funny, all of this is funny. Girls crying in front of you. It's funny. They are crying in front of you and you're laughing. You have time for a joke. Right there, there's your other round. How could you laugh? How could you laugh?
South Africa, a country that has seen an increase in the murder rate of women and children. Over recent years, this act of violence has seen a gradual increase in the number of such cases. A crime stat released on the 22nd of August 2022 revealed that between April and June 2022, a true but shocking figure of 1,670 children were victims of grievous body harm, which was a 58% increase as of the stats released in 2021. There have been some stories on some of these crimes, especially with the popular ones like Karabo Mokoena, Uyinene, and Alison Butter, which are just a few of the thousands and uncountable number of cases out there that have been covered, and with some of these cases causing massive outrage within the nation. Today, we are going to look at one of the cases of a gruesome act carried out by a predator, including the unbelievable and silly motive behind the case, and with the disturbing camera footage associated with this case. As of today, the high rate of femicide and child killings continue to plague the whole of South Africa. But before I get into this story, if you're a lover of disturbing, dark and mysteriously spooky stories, then you might consider subscribing, turn on all post notifications and like the video if you find it interesting. And with that said, let's get straight into today's story. This story takes place in South Africa in May 2017. Living in her home in Pluto Street, Elsies River in Cape Town was a 3-year-old little girl living with her parents known as Courtney Pieters. Her father was a man by the name of Fury, a factory worker in Cape Town, while her mother was Juanita Pieters, who worked as a cleaner in a fast food chain. Although both parents were not married, even though they had been together for a long time, they had 4 children between them. The mother would always call her Meisie Pop, and in turn, little Courtney would laugh. She was said to be an introvert who wouldn't take anything from strangers. Juanita would later say that she and Courtney were more than just mother and daughter. They were also friends and enjoyed each other's company, especially during the day when the two of them were left alone. At the time, living as a tenant in the Wendy home of the Pieters family was a 40-year-old man known as Mortimer Saunders. The room he lived in was said to have been owned by the son of both couples, but who would later move out for Mortimer to take occupation of the room. Mortimer Saunders, who was renting one of the rooms in the home of the little girl and her family, was also a childhood friend of Courtney's father, Fury. He was described as a decent man who worked at an international call center called the V&A Waterfront. He was also seen as a soft-spoken, shy guy who would not hurt a fly. The Wendy family shared some of the rooms they live in with each other, and the community in Elsies River were very close to each other. It was basically a community where everyone knew each other's business. That was how close they were. Courtney loved Mortimer and took him like an uncle, and he would always buy her things like chips and sweets, and would sometimes call her to his own room to watch cartoons, as he was the only one who had a DSTV at the house they lived in. A DSTV, known fully as a digital satellite television, is an African direct broadcast satellite service that shows different channels and shows. And this DSTV was a means which the little girl entertains herself with, as there was no money to enroll her in a school for daycare as of that time. Courtney's parents always left the house for work, and at the time, Juanita would leave her two younger children at home alone, as her economic status required her to work during the day. She sometimes would pay for a relative who was Aaron's niece and Courtney's cousin to help take care of the children. This relative was a woman by the name of Marsha Wen. However, even when Juanita was out of cash, Marsha would occasionally shake up on Courtney, even when she wasn't going to be paid for the job, but would not stay as long as she would have stayed to babysit the children during the days she was to be paid, as she also had her own kids and her own daily activities. On the 4th of May 2017, Juanita and Aaron woke up early. Aaron left earlier for his factory job, while Juanita stayed behind for some minutes to prepare food for the children. She knew they had no money to pay for a relative or anyone she knew to babysit her kids for her that day. So she asked the older brother to look after his younger sister, and after making sure all they needed to be comfortable during the day were provided for, Juanita then left the house, leaving the children under the care of Marsha and Mortimer, with whom they had established a relationship of trust. Juanita would tell her children goodbye and then left for work. By 8 a.m., Adrian, the 6-year-old, was in their house, while Courtney left to play with her friends near her home in South Beirut. Minutes flew, and Marsha came over to check up on the two children in the house. That morning, after coming over to the house and had asked Adrian, the 6-year-old, about her sister, the boy would tell her that Courtney had been watching television in Mortimer's room. While in the home, hours would flow by and Mortimer would leave the house to help a friend run an errand. By afternoon, he would return home and headed straight into his room. The lady would check up with Mortimer to know if little Courtney was with him. However, Mortimer would tell her that he hadn't seen her for a while after she was done watching television in his place, before going to play with friends. With this, Marsha, together with Adrian, would go to a nearby house in their neighborhood to search for Courtney. However, after several minutes of searching, it was to no avail. Marsha knew she had a responsibility to look after the two children, and for her, this was not looking good. Several hours had passed and Courtney was still nowhere to be found. By evening, Juanita and Aaron would return from work, and when they heard from Adrian that their youngest daughter was missing, they would begin to search for her in and around the neighborhood. She also searched her home, searching as far as possible with the assistance of some members of the African-speaking community. When the search was concluded that day, it was without any success. Mortimer would take out a picture of Courtney, which he had taken of her in his room while she was laying on his bed, and then took the picture to the parents, who would use the picture for a flyer and would then file a missing person report at Elsies River police station, and with the missing persons flyer detailing Courtney's description. Little Courtney was said to be last seen playing with her friends that day. Over the following days, more of the neighbors would soon hear of the missing Courtney, and soon the news spread to the whole community of Elsies River. And soon, several of the African-speaking community members from surrounding suburbs would join the police, the family, and the community safety group search operation for the search of the little girl. The search parties would split up into smaller groups to comb through a wider area, while following all leads from people detailing where they may have spotted the missing child. Juanita, Aaron, and some members of the community would lead the intensive search during the first few days for a young girl who had mysteriously vanished from the home. Mortimer would also join the family as they searched, while he and the community members would console and attend prayer meetings with both couples, who couldn't sleep knowing their child was still missing. From the 5th till the 8th of May 2017, social workers would join the search, while the police would also conduct a search at a rubbish dump, although they would find no trace of the missing girl. On the 5th day of the search, which was on the 9th of May 2017, angry and frustrated residents would gather at the local police station, accusing the South African Police Service of doing little to find the missing child, as there were still no leads. Some members of the community would also begin to blame or suspect the mother as being the reason behind their child's disappearance, although thorough search in their home had revealed nothing. The police would also begin to question both parents, as some of the members of the African-speaking community were now suspecting them. But still, there was no proof they were involved in foul play that led to their missing child.
Desperate and grieving, police showed them CCTV footage that could disclose their daughter's whereabouts. She was last seen playing near her home. A frantic community search has failed to turn up anything, but the girl on the video is not their child.
We're very worried because we don't know if she was eating from the day she went missing till today. We don't know if she's warm enough because the bed is empty where she sleeps. Now where she sleeps now, if she is sleeping, and she's still breastfeeding, her mother is still breastfeeding, so what is she drinking now at the moment? That's all we're wondering.
That person who had my baby, just please bring her back to me. That person don't have to be scared. But all I'm asking, just bring her back to me. Because I can't go on without her. Yesterday I feel like go throw me under a car because I miss her too much.
However, the search would carry on both on the 10th and 11th of May 2017. On the 8th day of the search, which was on the 12th of May 2017, the search would continue, and while police have followed up on several leads, they were no closer to finding the little girl. In a broadcast, the emotionally distraught woman would hold up a flyer of her baby, pleading with the public for information that would lead to the safe return of her daughter. However, there was no success. Instead, there would be few opportunists who pretend to have kidnapped the child in a bid to extort money from the emotionally distraught parents. During the 9th day of the search, which was on a Saturday, the 13th of May 2017, a particular search party would arrive at an industrial site in Buffer Circle in Epping Industrial, near the home of the little girl. At around 1:30 p.m., a woman by the name of Pamela, who was the captain of that search group, would veer away from the search party and would go behind the factories because there was an open field where people would walk through. She went through a thorny field and walked along the factory fence. At first, she didn't find anything. However, while looking through the leaves, at a point, she moved closer and her eyes immediately came to a stop, and it confirmed their worst fears. And with what she had seen, she became very emotional and just found a spot and sat down. She had seen someone lying there unresponsive, lying on a shallow grave and covered with newspapers, branches and leaves was the body of a little child. It would turn out to be that of Courtney Pieters, and her body was in a decomposing state. She was already dead. The zip on her jeans was open, and she had no shoes on her legs. The woman who first found the body would later state during her emotional testimony that she knew it was Courtney because Juanita had given them a description of the clothes she wore on the morning she went missing, and it matched with the clothes the body of the little girl was wearing while lying there. After some moments, Pamela, who had found the girl, came right again. She shouted hello to get the attention of the rest of the people involved in the search, and with this, they came forward and saw what the woman had seen few minutes prior. The police captain was also alerted, and he also came over and then called the police general and all the other search parties in different locations to break the news of the body they had found. Now, suspicion among some of the members of the community was beginning to grow as to whether it was both parents that had murdered their child. Juanita and Aaron, who were at home hoping and believing that their child would be found in good shape, would be fetched by some of the police authorities while at their home. They would be taken to the police station, and when they arrived, the police would also announce to them that a body had been found. But however, they were not allowed to go home yet. Meanwhile, some of the search group members returned to their respective destinations, and the next day, a search warrant was obtained, and the search would take place in the Wendy home. Marsha's room located in the backyard of the Wendy house would be searched by some of the police officers, including Pamela, who joined them, but nothing was found. Mortimer's room, which was found to be very untidy, was also searched. However, nothing suspicious was also found in his room. Meanwhile, Juanita and Aaron couldn't go to where the body was found because they weren't sure if the body was Courtney's, as the information had not been revealed to them. Both were allowed to stay at the police station as they couldn't do anything else. And after it was confirmed that the body was Courtney's, the news left them devastated, and soon they went straight home. Inside the home, the girl's siblings sobbed uncontrollably, while the parents were in an upstairs bedroom in a state of shock. Just a few days ago, Juanita had pleaded for the safe return of her daughter. That night, it was a heartbreaking scene in Pluto Street, where dozens of the African-speaking residents had gathered outside the Scheide's home to show support for the family. The next day, which was Sunday, 14th of May 2017, 10 days after Courtney went missing, and the day after her body had been found, the community members would arrive with flowers at the scene to pay their respects while demanding justice. The police would immediately launch an investigation after finding out that there were CCTV surveillance cameras leading to the site where the body was found, which meant that whoever or whatever means the body got there, they could trace it via the CCTV footage. After a few hours, a police captain known as Taylor would fetch both couples, Aaron and Juanita, and they would be taken to the police station. They had to go there for DNA testing and for questioning. Many members of the family also had their DNA collected so as to help with the investigation. While at the station, during the questioning, both Juanita and Aaron, her partner, would be presented with the obtained CCTV footage showing someone dumping what seemed to look like a body in a shallow grave where the body had been found. At first, when Juanita saw the video and the pictures, she was shocked and would immediately begin to deny knowing who the person was. However, the police knew two things. Either she was lying or she wasn't lying. Juanita didn't want to believe what she was seeing. In fact, she believed that it had to be a lie. There was no way for it to be true, and even Aaron Fury seemed not to believe what he was seeing. While still at the police station, another man had also been asked to help identify who it was that has been captured on the CCTV footage, and the man clearly knew who that was. Captain Taylor would then ask Juanita to call a particular person to come to the police station, since they had the person's contact. They called the person, however, the person would tell them that he was in a taxi and was about to get into another taxi to come see them at the police station. although the person never said where they were. In South Africa, taxi is a term used to refer to commercial buses used for transportation. The person who was called would also ask Juanita for information about what the police had said to know the information the police had already obtained. However, they would tell the person not to worry about what the police were saying and to just come to the police station. She would also tell the person on the other end of the phone that they would talk about what the police were saying later when they arrive. After more than the required minutes needed to get to the station, the person would be called again as they had not arrived, even though the person had mentioned that they were on the road leading to the station. Both couples would walk to the corner to see if the person was indeed approaching. However, the person wasn't there, and the person never came to the police station to answer to that call. On that night of 14th May 2017, a constable would receive a call at the Elsies River police station. The call came from a woman who wanted to remain anonymous and would ask the constable if the police were still looking for a particular person. And when the police said yes, the woman would direct the authorities to a house in Elsies River where the person would be found. They headed to the address and knocked on the door. The door swung open and they found out that the person they were looking for was seated and watching television. On seeing the police, the person who they were searching for stood up and tried to walk away. But at that moment, the police would grab the person by the jeans, read the rights to the person, and then the person was handcuffed, then taken to the Elsies River police station. While at the police station, the suspect was said to remain quiet and gave full cooperation while the arrest was carried out. On the Monday morning of the 15th of May 2017, which was the next day, the police in Elsies River would confirm that a suspect had been arrested on the previous night, which was on the Sunday night, the 14th of May 2017. Investigators had traveled to Saturn Close in Elsies River, which was just one street away from Pluto Street, the home of Peter's family. They had charged and arrested a 40-year-old person, a man by the name of Mortimer Saunders. After his arrest, he would be questioned about the murder of Courtney Pieters, and surprisingly, he didn't hesitate or try to cover what he had done. He would then calmly begin to describe why and how it happened. The following is a graphic narration of the series of events that led to the brutal killing of Courtney and the silly motive that led to it. From this point onwards, the details are highly graphic and very disturbing. So it's best to divert your attention away now if you don't wish to know the exact details of what happened, as I'm going to say it as it happened. On that Thursday morning of May 4th, 2017, which was 10 days before Mortimer Saunders' arrest, Aaron had gone for work and Juanita had bid her children goodbye that morning after making sure they were okay and provided for. She would then leave Courtney under the care of her 6-year-old brother, Adrian, also trusting Marsha to take care of both of her kids. She then made her way to work. That morning, Mortimer Saunders had made his way to use the bathroom that early morning and later went back to bed to continue with his sleep, since he was on leave from his call center job. Courtney would enter his room 10 to 15 minutes later after playing with friends that morning, as she wanted to watch television as usual. But Mortimer would ask her to leave the room and come back later during the day, since he wanted to go back to sleep, and probably because he doesn't want to be disturbed by the little girl. Courtney, being a child and not knowing the concept of time, came back to his room after about 30 minutes and woke him up to tell him she wanted to watch the television. Irritated by the little girl who was disrupting his sleep, Mortimer did something unbelievable. He would also say that he did it to spite the mother, Juanita, because at the time there was bad blood between them. This bad blood between them was as a result of the constant fighting that would occur whenever Mortimer was said to have gotten drunk. In a drunken state, he would begin to tell Juanita that she doesn't take care of the kids properly and would also begin to lay accusations about Juanita to his childhood friend Aaron. And some of these accusations would make both Juanita and her longtime boyfriend Aaron to begin to fight each other. This was the bad blood that would later be revealed to always come between them. Irritated for having been woken a second time, and compounded by ill feeling between myself and her mother, I decided to give her ant poison. My intention was to make her sick, and in doing so, to get back to her mother. Allegedly, he said he had bought the poison, which was in powder form, 8 months earlier before the death, in order to repel ants, as he claimed he had ant problem in his room. He then mixed the powdered poison with water and then gave Courtney a fusion cool drink to drink, which he had laced with the dissolved ant poison. He would say that at first, the little girl did not want to drink it, but on telling her to do so, she eventually did so. After a few minutes, the little girl would have felt an excruciating pain in her abdomen, and while she was in pain and extreme torture, Mortimer had left her for dead in his room. It was during this dying period that Mortimer had possibly heard Wendy calling out and searching for Courtney. Courtney tried to shout for help, but at that moment, Mortimer hit her hard on the head and forced a towel down her throat, so she remained quiet. Knowing that he wouldn't want Marsha to see the little girl in that state, he either proceeded to use the towel to strangle her, or he strangled her himself using his hands, hence ending her life before then wrapping her in a duvet and hiding her next to the bed. Marsha would knock in his room, asking him if he knew about Courtney's whereabouts. However, Mortimer would slightly open the door, pretending he knew nothing of her whereabouts, telling the woman she had only seen her when she came earlier to watch the television before she left to go play. After that short encounter, the woman would leave, and Mortimer proceeded to essay the dead body of the girl continuously, using his fingers, as he claimed. This was Mortimer's version of what happened. He had claimed to penetrate the little girl using his fingers. After this disgusting act, he knew he had to hide the dead body away from his room. He brought a plastic bag to put in the dead body. However, as the body couldn't fit into the bag he had brought along with him, he came up with another disturbing idea. He proceeded to break all the bones in her little frame. After breaking the bones of the little girl, he went to fetch a blanket from another room and then wrapped her up. After packing the remains of the little girl into the bag, he went to check how quiet everywhere was. And at the time, Marsha and Adrian, Courtney's brother, had gone to the next neighborhood to look for Courtney. Seeing that no one was around, he lifted the plastic bag containing the body over his shoulders and made his way to a secluded location about 1 kilometer away from their place of residence to dump her body. This was the industrial site where the body was later found on that Saturday afternoon, the 13th of May 2017. According to a source close to Mortimer Saunders, who said that Mortimer confided in him during that weekend of his arrest while being kept in the prison. Mortimer admitted that he did all this not just to get to the murder, but also because he didn't like the child. Hence, the person whom Juanita and Aaron thought was a family friend never liked her. His gentle and soft-spoken nature had all been a disguise why the family thought they could trust him. The CCTV footage, which was shown to both couples on that Sunday they were called for questioning, clearly showed Mortimer walking along the busy roads of Cape Town, carrying the remains of her little girl while turning at different directions to get to a spot which he felt was well hidden, as to conceal and dump the dead body. The other man who came to the police station and who knew who it was in the CCTV footage and who had also helped to confirm the footage was also a friend of Mortimer. He knew and could spot his walking step even from a distance, and he also knew the type of clothes he usually wore, which coincidentally was a match with the clothes he was putting on when he was arrested. During the moment of being shown the footage, Juanita had lied to the officers that she didn't know who the man was, while in reality, Juanita knew it was Mortimer. But she was just in so much shock that She didn't want to believe that it was Mortimer she was seeing in that footage, as both her and her partner, who was also Mortimer's childhood friend, had come to know him as a decent man. They also saw him as a white person and believed he loved children and loved Courtney. Juanita would later say she never could have imagined that someone who was living under the same roof as them could be her child's killer. Mortimer had even helped during the search for the missing girl and had hugged and consoled her, telling her not to cry while assuring her that her baby girl would be found. The following is the full disturbing CCTV footage released by the authorities, which clearly showed Mortimer Saunders carrying the remains of the child to the industrial site where he hid the body that was eventually found. Also, after Juanita and Aaron had seen this footage, the person she had called on that Sunday, the 14th of May 2017, to come to the police station, and who had asked her what the police officers were saying, while also telling them that he was on a taxi and on his way to the police station, but who never came, would also turn out to be Mortimer Saunders. His guilty conscience must have made him suspicious that he had been caught, or he did it to avoid questions, and hence he wouldn't pitch in after the call till he was tracked down after a tip-off and arrested that night. After his confession, Mortimer was expected to appear in the Goodwood Magistrate Court on a charge of murder. After this confession by Mortimer, Juanita and her partner Aaron were also said to be very disturbed that a trusted family friend whom Courtney called uncle could betray them like this. Mortimer Saunders really took part in the search for Courtney. However, in a search group, he had mischievously led some of the members of the community away from where he knew he had dumped the body. It would also be revealed by an insider that Mortimer was comfortable revealing details of Courtney's death because he believed he had done nothing wrong. The crime also shocked the friends and families of Mortimer Saunders, including his father, who is a pastor of an old apostolic church in Elsies River. On the 17th of May, 4 days after the discovery and 3 days after his arrest, Mortimer would make an appearance in court. He was to face charges of 1 count of murder and 1 count of kidnapping and 1 count of essay. The case was then postponed to the following week to ascertain whether Mortimer Saunders could apply for legal aid representation. He was also granted bail, but he refused bail and instead wanted to remain in prison, possibly not to face the family, and secondly, for fear of his life, as the enraging community who had heard of his involvement might decide to take matters into their own hands in the form of jungle justice. So he remained in prison. He was also kept away from some prison inmates who heard he was a child killer and had forced himself on a child. Somehow, prisoners harshly deal with fellow inmates known to be child predators.
From January up to today, the 17th of May, there are 19 children that have been killed in the Western Cape. 12 of those cases will go to the High Court. And it's a sad situation that we find ourselves in.
Sonder se verdediging het aangevoer dat hy nie nou al vir borgvol aansoek doen nie, maar dat hy in die selle van die hospitaal aangehou word omdat hy vrees vir sy lewe. Die magistraat het gesê hulle kan buite die hof hieroor gesels, waarna die saak tot die 24ste Mei uitgestel is.
There is just one question. What we want to know, what did the child do to him? We want to know and to hear that answer. That's all what we want, and then justice can follow.
On the 19th of May 2017, 6 days after Courtney's body was found and 5 days after Mortimer's confession, the Elsies River community members and children from nearby creche would attend a prayer service as they marched to the crime scene where her body was found, in honor of the girl who had her life cut short by a predator. After a murder that enraged the nation, The president of South Africa, as of then, by the name of Jacob Zuma, would pay a visit to the family and unveiled a plaque in honor of the 3-year-old, while also vowing to reduce crime in the area.
Ek baie vra vir hom, ek wil vir hom vra, waar het hy my kind al die pad gehou? Hoekom het hy het gedoen? Hoekom en waarom vir Courtney? Hy het in die kombuis vir my gehak. Toe sê hy vir my, ek moet nie worry nie. Ons gaan na kry. Nadat hy weer het my kind. Hy het saam jou besoek ook. Hy het my kind seer gemaakt, wat my hart so seer maak. Ik weet niet of ik ooit die body kan opmaken. Die dag als ons wel beren. Dat voel. Ik was de tijd dat een man niet van waar was. Ik kom water jou. Ik voel stukken zoals ik oor en oor zei. Dat voel voor mij. Een deel van mij binnen is weg. Daar is een leegte hier binnen mij. Een deel waar zij behoort het binnen in mij.
A year on, Courtney Pieters' mother was still battling to cope with the killing. If I could go back and change everything, I would not have gone to work that day. If only I knew what would happen, I would not have gone to work. To this day, I still ask myself why I did not stay at home. Together with the money which they had also been given for support, she would also later reveal that the president delivered on his promise on finding a better and safe home for her family. Also, she would say that moving away from the old home to a new house, together with the support from the community members and friends, had made it easier for her to adjust to life without her little girl. Although she would admit that some days were painfully unbearable. On the 28th of May 2018, the day the family, friends and community were waiting would finally arrive. During the trial, Mortimer Saunders would plead guilty to murdering 3-year-old Courtney Pieters, but insisted it wasn't premeditated. Mortimer Saunders entered his plea explanation to the court, where he recounted what happened on the day he murdered the young girl. He also admitted to necrophilia, a term that refers to sleeping with a dead body, but he denied he essayed the girl before killing her, as if that would have made a difference even if he did it while she was still alive. Mortimer also confessed to poisoning the child. At one point, Mortimer also admitted to interfering with the corpse. In his plea explanation, he detailed how he inserted 3 fingers into her private parts after she died. He also admitted to putting his genitals on parts of her body, but denied engaging in intercourse. This was somewhat at odds with his own plea. However, the state refused to accept his admissions, which meant that 2 not guilty pleas have been entered into the court record. For Juanita Pieters, she was called to the stand to recall the events of the day. At some point, while bravely giving her testimony, it understandably proved too much to carry on, and the session was adjourned by the presiding judge, and the case was to resume the following day. On the 29th of May 2018, Juanita Pieters cried as she told the court how she feels hurt and partly blamed herself for her daughter's death because she left her children unattended on the day the girl disappeared. The child was left in bed with her 6-year-old brother on the morning of the 4th of May 2017. After Juanita Pieters had been cross-examined by the defense, a surprise apology would come from Mortimer Saunders. The mother took a while to respond, but eventually told the court she's forgiving Saunders, but can never forget what he had done. She would also say that while she believes her daughter would never go to the accused bedroom on her own, she can admit that Mortimer showed the child love, and the little girl was fond of him. She also admitted lying to the investigating officer the first time the photos from the CCTV footage were shown to her. She admitted she told the investigating officer she didn't know Saunders because she didn't want to believe it was him. This showed the level of trust she had for Mortimer Saunders. She would also reveal that Mortimer Saunders' daughter lived close by and was a few years older than her own daughter and came to play almost every day. From the 31st of May 2018, it had all been an emotional and grueling day, as different witnesses, including Pamela Shaws, who first found the body on that Saturday, took to the stands to testify. Marsha Wen would also testify, speaking of how Mortimer had told her she hadn't seen Courtney, and how hours later she had seen Mortimer coming from somewhere, and he had calmly approached her and told her he saw Courtney entering into another neighborhood on that particular day. And also he had gone out to use the internet cafe, and how he had used the opportunity to look around for Courtney. Mortimer had also helped her with an errand by printing out her resume for her job applications. The court also heard that Mortimer actively participated in the search for the missing girl and supplied a photo of Courtney from his cell phone to be used on a missing persons flyer. After the whole ordeal, the matter would be postponed to the following week for every party to testify. On the 6th of June 2018, Mortimer Saunders would admit to feeding the child ant poison before hitting her over the head and choking her. A forensic toxicologist would also testify about the high levels of carbaryl found in the gastric tissue, blood, and the bile. Carbaryl is a pesticide used to kill insects like ants, ticks, and spiders. The expert had found 0.8 milligrams per liter of poison in the girl's blood. Now, to know how bad this was, you should be aware that 0.5 milligram per liter is a toxic dose, while 0.6 milligram per liter is considered lethal. Hence, they had found a quantity more than enough to kill a grown adult inside the body of little Courtney. However, since the body was only found 9 days after her death, there was no telling what dose of poison she was given, although it could have been more. Within seconds to minutes, depending on the dosage, the chemical could affect the flow of oxygen to the heart. This also meant that the child would immediately start having slow circulation of oxygen, the feeling of slurred speech, vomiting, coughing, tear duct secretions, fluid buildup in the lungs, tremors, paralysis of the diaphragm, convulsions, cyanosis, excessive saliva, lack of muscle control, coma, and then eventually death. This was an extreme level of torture, and Courtney's mother was in court to hear all this while reliving the pain all over again. The toxicologist would explain that both the poisoning and the asphyxiation could on their own have caused the death. However, together it could have happened quicker. On the 17th of June 2018, a forensic analyst would testify that he had found a positive match of the accused semen on the top, which was worn by Courtney on the day she died. Blood was also found on the child's jean shorts, but did not have enough DNA, which could be extracted to yield a profile. However, a swab was also taken from the deceased right thigh, where he would find traces of male DNA again. However, the concentration was too small to yield a profile. While in court, the judge had also questioned Mortimer that if the intention was to get back to the mother, then why choose to harm a child who was also a daughter to his friend? The judge also pointed out how various witnesses who lived in the home, including the investigating officer, had mentioned how there were no ant problem in the house. For Mortimer to have obtained the poison months before the murder meant that it was planned. After obtaining the poison, he had waited for an opportunity to do it when there were no adults in the home. He also went outside to mix the poison, gave it to her, then threatened her with violence when she initially refused to drink the liquid. Then choked her, hit her with an open hand, and then strangled her. According to the judge, Courtney went through torture, and the high poison content in Courtney's blood in addition to the above reasons, led the court to infer that Saunders had intended to kill her. The court also found that Mortimer also had sufficient time to stop his evil inclinations, as the ant poison was slow-acting and reversible, meaning that Saunders could have called for medical assistance and the little girl would still be alive. However, he made sure to carry the plan through. The court would also state that it was not necessary for the accused to have planned for a long period of time, as even a few minutes would have been sufficient to carry out the evil deed. Hence, these were factors which showed that the murder were premeditated. The pathologist who had supervised the toddler post-mortem would also say that she had sustained external blunt force injuries to her face, torso, and limbs, and that there were signs of pressure to her neck as well as genital injuries. He also added that the genital injuries could have been caused by it being overextended, possibly by male genitalia. However, he could not exclude that those injuries happened before she died. He also couldn't exclude the possibility that a male genital had been used for penetration due to the presence of semen found. Hence, this could have caused the injuries she had sustained internally. This statement contradicted Mortimer's claims of never essaying the girl, but he had rather used his hands, which seemed odd to the pathologists, as hands cannot produce semen. After different testimonies, the trial was postponed to the 6th of August 2018 to allow the defense to consult with his pathologist. During that day, the state would call for Mortimer to be punished harshly, and there were calls for the court to convict the accused of the rape and premeditated murder of Courtney. The judge would then postpone the judgment to November 2018, and 3 days was set aside to hand down the verdict.
The family of Courtney called us to come and assist because they felt that not enough was being done to find their daughter, and that's how we came involved.
People who are coming to come and rent in your yard, you have to screen the person, because who could have known that guy? When I saw me on the peak, I saw a gentleman, and to me it was just not on.
If they listen to the community and the family and us, when we ask them to bring in the sniffer dogs, to do proper investigations, to bring in more resources, we would not stand here in this court today to listen to 2 counts of rape and 1 count of murder. We wouldn't stand here. It would never have reached the States. But a big part of our strategy definitely will be to include the men. Because even during this search, I've constantly asked, where's the men? Why are they not coming to search? Obviously, there's been men, but I don't think they were representative of the community.
After almost 18 months after the body of little Courtney had been found, the judgment would start on the 6th of November 2018, and the judge was expected to begin reading an overview of the defense case on the following day. On the 7th of November 2018, Mortimer would be found guilty on charges of rape and premeditated murder of 3-year-old Courtney. His pre-sentencing procedure was held on the 4th of December 2018 in a case which the judge described as one of the most brutal, vicious and ruthless attacks the court has ever seen. After the court previously warned Juanita that she could face child neglect charges because she left her daughter in the care of her 7-year-old brother on the day she disappeared, Juanita had said she felt partly responsible for the death of her child. The court had been said to consider the family's economic status, as they understood that she had left her children alone to go out and earn a living, while not being able to pay someone to take care of them. A week later, on the 11th of December 2018, the sentence was to be read and heard. With all this critical evidence in mind, the judge had to weigh Mortimer Saunders' ability to be rehabilitated and reintegrated into society. However, the prosecution argued that Mortimer Saunders was a high risk to vulnerable and weak people, especially children. Therefore, the judge ruled that for the safety of society, Saunders should spend the rest of his living days behind bars. The judge, by the name of Babaloa Mantame, would hand 2 life sentences to the child killer, 1 for rape and 1 for murder.
After careful consideration of the totality of evidence, that was presented in this court. This court is therefore satisfied that the state has proved its case beyond reasonable doubt. In the result, you are found guilty on count 1, that is rape on the main count. Number 2, you are found guilty on count 2 on murder on the main count.
In South Africa, 25-year sentencing are given for life sentences. Both sentences were to run concurrently, meaning that he would have to spend at least 50 years in prison if he was to be ever released. Mortimer had thought that saying he essayed the little girl after death would have given him a lesser sentence. However, justice took his full course. On February 29, 2 months after he was sentenced, Mortimer Sundance would apply for leave to appeal his conviction and sentence. However, after the judge heard arguments from the state and defense, the judge found the appeal would hold no reasonable prospect of success. Hence, his application was dismissed. Until this day, Mortimer remains behind bars. As for little Courtney, she was still a child growing up and never deserved such a horrific ending. She remains the focus in this case.